Not many Nigerians know that on 3 different occasions, Nigeria's seat of power, Aso Rock, has been empty without a leader or a commander-in-chief. Both the president and his vice flew out of the country and abandoned their leadership duties. In this episode, we shall expose the periods when Tinubu and his vice, Shettima, created a big vacuum in Aso Rock and put Nigeria in serious danger because of the absence of leadership. Long before he mysteriously won the 2023 presidential election, Tinubu was nicknamed BAT. As we all know, it is an acronym for his full names, Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Coincidentally, bat is the name of a flying mammal, a bird that flies by natural instinct and for survival. Since he took charge as president of Nigeria, Tinubu has made flying his survival instinct, meaning he flies too frequently like his life depends on it. Perhaps, as the African proverb says, people act by the spirit of their names. Here are some facts to convince any doubter. As at April 11th, in less than 2 years since he assumed office, Tinubu has spent about 678 days as Nigeria's so-called president. In this period, he has spent about 205 days abroad, representing about 7 months. He spent 60 days on 8 different visits to France alone. In a further breakdown, Tinubu has visited 17 different countries in about 31 trips. He has spent over 133 hours on flight. So, judging by the facts and figures available, Tinubu earns the title as Nigeria's president with the most overseas trips. Tinubu's only competitor for this particular title could be his predecessor Buhari, who embarked on 51 abroad trips in his 8 years as president. However, with how Tinubu is moving, having flown out for a record 31 times in less than 2 years, he could easily beat Buhari's record in less than 4 years. Well, he did promise during his campaign that he would build on and supersede Buhari's legacies. He's doing just that. For his great strides in touring the globe like a bat on a survival mission, the BBC baptized Tinubu with the befitting title, The Flying President. This to double with the tourist-in-chief title that Atiku gave him. Just like a bat flies to survive but bears a premonition of risk and death, Tinubu's abroad trips causes risk and killer costs for Nigeria, and here's how. Nigeria, troubled by many issues, needs leadership that is capable, competent, compassionate, and committed to solving her problems. It is a country with fragile or weak political institutions but very strong individual leaders. This makes the presence of the president in the country or his vice who will act as president very important. Those at the presidency acted as they liked and a culture of anyhowness was restored. This is why, whenever the president was away, it appeared as though there's a power vacuum in Aso Rock. We saw this happen many times under Buhari, but under Tinubu, it is far, far worse. Yet, Tinubu and Shettima have jetted out of the country in the same period on different occasions, on 3 different occasions to be exact. What is more disturbing, each of the times that they traveled abroad, Nigeria was in dire situation and needed leadership presence. Tinubu went missing. April 23rd, 2024, Tinubu left Abuja for the Netherlands in a so-called official visit. He spent about a week in the country and headed to Riyadh, Saudi Arabia to attend a special World Economic Forum (WEF) meeting which would hold for April 28th and 29th. Rather than return to Nigeria, he sneaked out to London from Saudi for treatment. No one in the country knew his whereabouts aside from his boys at Aso Rock. At this time, Nigeria faced severe hardships, increasing security and fuel scarcity. Tinubu refused to hand over to Shettima, violating Section 145 of the Constitution. Shettima was incapacitated. Aso Rock was in disarray. Nigeria entered autopilot. He reappeared in Nigeria on May 8th, same year, but not until after thinking Nigerians began to protest on both the social media and in print. Tinubu and Shettima traveled out of Nigeria, left the seat of power empty. October 2nd, 2024, Tinubu jetted out of Nigeria. It was less than 2 weeks after he returned from London, where he escaped to for medical care. In fact, no one knew his whereabouts sometime in September 2024, and it took intense pressure from Nigerians before the presidency released details that he traveled to London from China. Tinubu departed Nigeria to Paris, France on October 2nd. Exactly 2 weeks later, Shettima left to Stockholm, Sweden for a 2-day bilateral meeting. With both of them out of the country, Aso Rock was empty of leadership. At the time, Nigeria was facing several challenges. Flood was ravaging Borno State and other northeast states. Yet, Tinubu and Shettima were touring the world with Nigerians' wealth. Tinubu just didn't care. Worse still, Shettima's trip was totally unnecessary. Why so? Tinubu could have easily gone to Stockholm for the bilateral meeting from Paris where he was. Paris by far is much closer to Stockholm than Nigeria is to the city. Paris to Stockholm is about 833 miles away. This is less than a 2-hour flight. Meanwhile, Abuja to Stockholm is about 3,055 miles difference with about 9 hours flight. Genuinely discharging his responsibilities as a leader, he would have stopped by in Sweden aboard his newly bought presidential jet. But Nigeria paid for his inefficiency and for him to gallivant, and he just doesn't care about the cost and losses to the country. It was a very dangerous time for Nigeria indeed, that 2 of her leaders were both absent from the seat of command. Tinubu and Shettima traveled out of Nigeria, leaving Nigerians to their fate. Tinubu again zoomed off to France on April 2nd, 2025. The presidency gave the same flimsy excuses that he was going on a working visit. Meanwhile, the president of France, Emmanuel Macron, who should have received him, embarked on a state visit to Egypt the moment Tinubu arrived in France. Nigerians have yet to get answers as to why Tinubu loves traveling to France so much that 3 months don't pass without him visiting the country. When the presidency announced that Shettima was traveling out again, this time for Senegal for the independence celebration. The night to the day that Tinubu jetted out of Nigeria, headsmen attacked a community in Plateau State. The day before Shettima's departure to Senegal, there was another attack in the same Plateau State. The country was bleeding, yet Tinubu was more concerned with going to France to spend private time. Meanwhile, celebrating Senegal independence was more important to Shettima and the so-called presidency than the massacre of innocent Nigerians in Plateau State. What is more disturbing is the revelation that Tinubu traveled to France to lobby for diplomatic recognition from Donald Trump's government and to force stop the release of his alleged criminal records by the United States government. Headsmen attacks across the country, particularly Plateau, Benue, and Enugu states, have festered dangerously and the economy is rapidly drowning. Yet, in the midst of all this and more, Nigerians can't cite any leader in Aso Rock.
Free Life Media.